Are you a parent navigating the complexities of co-parenting, family court, or even domestic violence? If you are looking for ways to help protect your children and build a strong and supportive community around you, then look no further. Gray Minds Think Alike is your go-to resource for everything related to the complexities of family life. Join us as we dive into thoughtful conversations with experts and explore practical tips and strategies for tackling the challenges of parenthood in the throes of adversity so that no parent feels alone and every child's safety is protected. Welcome back to Gray Minds Think Alike, where we dive deep into the conversations that matter most with experts who enlighten, inspire, and empower. I'm your host, Ali Kessler, and today's guest brings both expertise and heart to a community that desperately needs both. We're joined by Erin Snow, founder of Seacoast Listening Lounge, a safe and confidential space for women to share their stories without judgment, fixing, or pressure, just real, compassionate listening. Before creating the Listening Lounge, Erin spent 16 years as a legal advocate for survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, and stalking. She walked beside women in high lethality divorces, family court battles, protective orders, and system failures that should have protected them, but often didn't. She's trained in trauma-informed advocacy, legislative reform, and empathetic listening, and she's here today to share what survivors really need, why listening is more powerful than advice, and how safe spaces can change lives. So Erin, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Everything that you have done, I have lived. So I appreciate you coming on and talking with us, and I know our listeners will. If you wanted to start, say a little bit about yourself and how you started in this.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Ali, for having me. I appreciate being able to talk with you and share my experience. So I guess I'll go kind of way back. I'm a survivor myself of child sexual abuse. I was sexually abused by my friend's father at a sleepover when I was about 9 years old. So at a very early age, I learned what I could talk about or what I was told I could talk about. I was told or taught to be silent, and I had to really navigate very difficult issues at a very early age. And that shaped my relationships with boys in my teenage years, when I was dating, into my marriage. And so after college, I started going into the legal field. I was working at bigger corporate law firms, and I was like, this is not for me. I went to work at the Rhode Island Attorney General's office and worked in the elder abuse unit. And there was really my first experience working with victims. Okay. I was working with very vulnerable populations. For the first time, I got this sense of accountability that people had done things that were wrong, and there was a system that was holding them accountable. And hadn't really realized that that was resonating with me because of my experience as a child and things that had happened to me in my teen years. I was like, okay, this makes sense to me because I didn't have that accountability for what happened to me. And then I moved up to New Hampshire and I took a job with New Hampshire Legal Assistance. It's a legal aid organization here. And I started working on the domestic violence advocacy project. And I thought, I was there for nearly 17 years. And I was like, this was a job that I saw the posting, I applied, I got the job. I didn't really think that this was my calling. Right. I would be able to relate so well with the clients I was working with. And I was working with domestic violence, sexual assault, and stalking victims and survivors. And in the family court system, which is a hot mess. Yes. That's like a kind way of saying it was. Yes. It was a hot mess.
I was involved, everything that you just said, stalking, domestic violence, everything.
Yeah, horrific. And the court system does not do its job in protecting people.
No. And why do you think that is? Do you think they just don't believe?
I think there's a lot of issues. I think some of it has to do with resources. I think that there are not enough, here in New Hampshire anyway, there's not enough judges to cover the amount of cases. I think that they are trying to have cases resolve. And so they're pushing cases through mediation. Cases are resolving through mediation that are not appropriate for mediation because there's a coercive control element involved. I think that people aren't fully disclosing the entire situation because they're afraid. They're afraid that if they talk, the abuse is going to continue. There have been threats. There are threats towards the kids. There are not enough supervised visitation centers, safe supervised visitation centers. I think there's one left now here in New Hampshire. The resources are just not there to protect.
And if they were, do you think things would be different? Because a lot of it has to believe with, they just don't believe that these horrible things happen. So they put it through mediation. They put it through this. They put it through that because they're like, well, they'll work it out.
Yeah. And I think there is a lack of training on domestic violence. So
So it all goes back to training.
Training, absolutely. Training. And then the people that are hearing these cases, so the protective order cases, the divorce and parenting cases. So we had a system here in New Hampshire where the judge hears the case. It's in the family court system. Originally, I think the intent was for there to be one judge that hears the case through its entirety. But then there weren't enough judges, and judges are rotating. So you've got 3 or 4 judges sometimes hearing one case that lasts forever, like years. These cases are going, and there's months in between hearings.
It's in Florida as well.
Yeah. And then and that's a resource issue because they can't schedule the hearings more quickly. Things that don't rise to the level of an emergency hearing get pushed back.
Which is what happened with me the weekend that I was looking for my son. I tried to get a domestic violence injunction, which was denied by one judge. The next day, I tried to get an emergency pickup order, which denied by another judge. And then the stalking injunction, which was finally approved by a third judge, all within a 3-day span.
Yeah.
All within the same case.
Mm-hmm. I'm so sorry. Like that. And that's an example of people who are let down by the system. It sounds like you tried multiple times. There are people who try once and they don't get it. And they're like, I'm never doing that again. Because what happens is when you write out one of those domestic violence petitions, you're putting everything in there. You try to put everything in there. But then the other side, your abuser, is served with that. And they know everything that you've put in there. So then if you don't get the protective order, either on a temporary basis or a final basis, they already know what you said and there is no protection. And
mine was denied. So he was not notified about it because it never got to that point. It was just denied. And then.
So here in New Hampshire, how it works is you go to the courthouse, you file a petition and you stay there while the judge reviews it and makes a decision. And if the judge is going to deny it, they're supposed to talk to you first before they deny it. That does not always happen.
Right.
Then what's supposed to happen is they're supposed to say, hey, the court staff, this was denied, but it was set for a hearing, which is super dangerous because you have the option then. And what they should be saying is you can withdraw this, in which case the other side doesn't hear anything about it. However, if they're not notified, if they're not told, hey, you might want to withdraw this, and they don't get connected with a crisis center, then they're served. If no temporary order was issued, they're getting the petition with everything that you wrote out. There's no temporary order in place and a hearing is set within 30 days. So that's a super dangerous time. It's just, there are systems in place to protect victims. They're not always followed. And that's not to say that those systems that are already in place are the most effective, are the best practices. And there's still so much work that needs to be done. And what's really frustrating, at least from my perspective of when I was doing the legal work and the legislative work, was it always felt reactive. Something really bad would happen. And then there would be a panel convened, or there would be an advisory group convened, a committee convened. And it's like, why do we have to wait for something horrible to happen in order for us to come up with a process? And no process is going to be perfect, but it really does start with believing the victims and the survivors, right?
Yeah.
There's just so much bias within the system that,
I always say that until something tragic happens to a judge, nothing's going to change, which is, really what takes. Everyone with me was like, wow, we didn't think this happened. And I'm like, this happens at an alarming rate. My son was murdered because I needed the attention that it needed at all. Ultimately, it comes down to they don't think it really happens, but it does. And which is why I got Greyson's law passed here in Florida. Do you have something similar or child protective laws in New Hampshire? Because I know we were trying to get something like Caden's law to get the training, but it didn't pass with Greyson's law. I had to take it out.
So my personal experience in the legislative process and system, hundreds of bills are filed every single year. every session, and some of them make it through and some of them don't. And my job was to advocate for those bills that positively could have a positive impact on victims and survivors, and then to oppose those that had a negative impact and that weren't safe. And it is not easy to the process. People making the decisions aren't always aware of the issues. And it's really, you experts testifying, and then you have the public testifying, and some of it is very case specific. And then others are more, hey, this is a systemic issue. And, I wish there were more bills that got through. Don't think there's one. There was a child protective bill related to who could file for protective orders on behalf of a minor that was passed a few years ago, but not, I think, similar to what you have in Florida, unfortunately.
Well, ours is at the bare minimum. It took me 2 years to get Greyson's law passed. It was denied the first year. It was originally stronger. It included more about training and more about coercive control. And the Florida bar made us take it out ultimately. So we had to dumb it down as what I say. But what does that really do? It makes it worse. So, but I know that there were things passed in New York. There was a Kira's law I heard about and a Jennifer's law somewhere else. So hopefully something will make its way into every state, because this should all be federal, not
I think protecting families, protecting children, protecting victims and survivors. And it starts very simply with people being believed. Let's just start there, right?
Right. Well, what's so crazy is I've been watching Mad Men, rewatching it from 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And, it's just so crazy to see how the times have changed in every manner. Forget about the smoking cigarettes and drinking whiskey through business meetings. But you look at just the family aspect, and it's the wives are home with the children. And if they get divorced, the kids stay with the mom. Right. And they see the dad. Maybe the dad comes and takes them out to dinner or a weekend here and there. And then somehow along the way, it changed. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, because fathers do have rights, and I get that. But we lost the tender years doctrine, which is what basically gave more rights to the mother. Mm-hmm. And that's just not the case anymore. And that's probably because a lot of men were just power hungry and were well, this is my child too. And so I want 50%.
Yeah. And that's New Hampshire recently passed 50-50
so do we.
Presumption,
yep.
Which I advocated against.
Sure. It should never be a blanket statement for every family.
It was really, it's the best interest standard. Our language was frequent and continuing contact, which can look like a lot of different things, that each family within the court system really should be looked at as an individual family and the circumstances of that family, not let's start with this jumping off point of 50-50, because if we do that, the families that where domestic violence is involved. So let's just say, and I'll say, I'm going to talk about the mom as the victim here and dad's abuser. I recognize that that's not every case.
Of course.
But let's say that they're in an abusive relationship and they share children, and mom wants to leave. And the thing that she's going to protect the most are her children, right? And if she knows that if she goes to court, the starting point is 50-50. That's the starting point. And it can go up and it can go down, but you have to be able to demonstrate that.
Right.
Jumping point is 50-50. As a mom, in your head, are you thinking, hey, I could go to court and he's made threats that I'm not going to see the kids. I'm going to lose the kids. If I go to court and I'm not successful in talking about the abuse and what happened to me, then it's going to be 50-50. So I can be in the home. If I do nothing, I can be in the home 100% of the time, and 100% of the time be in a position to protect the kids. Or I can leave the relationship, file for divorce, and know that the jumping off point is 50-50, presumption of custody, and I'm not successful in showing that it should be different, then now I'm not in the house 50% of the time with the kids. I'm not there 50% of the time in a position to protect. And that's terrifying, because so many people will not report. Reporting domestic violence, it's underreported anyway, but where that is the situation where you're like, okay, I could be here 100% of the time and it's awful and it's horrible and no one should have to experience and endure this. Or I can be out of the house 50% of the time without the kids and they might be at risk. and who's going to protect them. Like, those are not good decisions.
I agree.
Those are horrible positions to put victims and survivors in who want to protect their kids. And so, yeah, I think where that's happening, I think it will be interesting to see statistically what's happening with the reporting in those states that pass that. I think you'll probably see a decrease. Some states may have already started to see a decrease in the amount of reports. But yeah, those are not decisions that anyone should have to make.
Correct. I mean, in my case, I wasn't even living with, Greyson's father. We weren't a couple. So I didn't, it's not like I had somewhere to leave. It was my life. Mm-hmm. And, it was very separate. He wasn't even involved in Greyson's birth. So for someone to just sweep on in, at 6 months in, and still gets 50% custody, to me is just insanity. So let's talk. Okay, you said, people don't just want to be heard. They want to be understood. What does that mean in practice?
Yeah. So I think that when we're listening to people, we're listening to hear. Like, that's what we think we need to do. When someone's talking, we listen. We hear physically what they're saying to us. But are we really understanding them? And that doesn't mean that you have to have the same experiences. That doesn't mean that you have to relate and say, oh, me too. Like, I lived that same thing. Just empathetic listening is like, all right, you're a human, I'm a human, and you're telling me something. What is it that you want me to receive, and how do you want me to receive it? And what do you need back from me? And so that's why, I created this business, Seacoast Listening Lounge. It's a safe space, as you said, for women to talk about whatever it is that is going on for them in their lives. We have so much going on in our lives.
Right.
And this is a space. It's not therapy. I'm not looking to fix people. I'm not looking to give advice. If they want it, I will give it as a neutral third party. But really, it is truly a space for listening and a space for women to put down those things that we carry with us all the time. And we either brush off, or we say it's not that bad, or we think that people aren't going to get it. And so that's really transformational to see people say, no one's really listened to me before. I didn't have that. My clients, a large part of where this came from was my domestic violence legal work, where clients were saying, Erin, nobody is hearing me. I'm telling my story. Nobody is hearing me. Nobody believes me. And I got that from what happened to me as a kid. I didn't talk about it. I was afraid people wouldn't believe me. And then I got divorced, and I didn't tell people that I was getting a divorce because I didn't want the judgment. I didn't want but he's such a nice guy. Like, do you know he's a nice guy? So they're
always nice until they're not.
Right. And, they're very good at showing up the way that they need to in public. And the real person in the relationship, but that's not always the person that they're presenting as. And so people are like, well, I don't understand why you would feel that way. Like, I'm not seeing what you're seeing. Okay, because you're seeing the image that they are working very hard for you to see.
Okay, so let's talk about Seacoast Listening Lounge. How is it different than therapy, coaching, and things like that?
Yeah. So therapy, this is non-clinical. I'm very clear I'm not a therapist. My training is from my legal background and just my own personal experiences of what I was looking for in terms of empathetic listening when I had my own traumatic experiences.
Is this group, like a group of people?
So I do individual sessions.
Okay.
It's individual. I do run a group, but primarily it's individual. And I'm here in New Hampshire, but I'm also virtual. So I see clients across the country. And so I said, it's not clinical. I'm not a therapist. I'm not attempting to diagnose anyone.
You're just there to listen and offer advice.
If they want it. I have some clients who say, Erin, I need you to witness what I'm going through. And by witness, I mean, I need you to hear me. And nobody has heard me before. And I need you to witness this experience. And I don't want you to say anything. So I engage in the empathetic listening, the nodding, the making sure they know that I'm engaged with them. And I listen. And they're like, I have done that for 2 hours straight before. And that's what they needed. And they're like, okay, I feel so much better. And then I have other clients who want it to be more of a conversation. They say, Erin, I always ask, how do you want me to listen to you? And some clients say, I want it to be a conversation. I really want to know what you think. You don't have any skin in the game. You don't know the players. So please just let me know what you think from a human perspective of someone who's not
sure.
And then I have other clients
who want to get something at the the end of it, right? You want someone to not only hear you, but also acknowledge and maybe offer a different perspective than what we have ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
And friends might be biased in some sort of manner. So it's good to have a third party.
Friends might be biased. Friends might be over it. They're like, really, how much longer are you going to talk about this? And some things, like, even if they're your best friend, like, I get this question a lot. Well, can you just talk to your friends? Well, sure, absolutely. This is not to replace therapy. It's not to replace a coach. It's not to replace your friends or your family. This is to complement all of that. I have clients who are in therapy and also do professional listening. I have people who talk to their friends about some things and talk to me about other things, because there is that fear sometimes of, how is this person I'm telling this information to? How are they receiving it? Like, they may not vocalize what they're thinking. Like, let's just say your friend comes and they tell you they're having an affair. Like, your reaction might be, that's horrible. Oh my God. Like, did you think about da 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 da? And I'm not going to have that reaction. And they don't have to worry about what's going on in my head. They don't have to worry about me saying that out loud. They don't have to worry about me saying, okay, when really in my head, I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, they don't have to worry about any of that. And I think even with our best friends and our family, we're still always thinking, what are they thinking about me? What do they think about this situation? Are they judging me? And that takes this totally out of the plate. That's not a concern that they need to have, so they can truly, like, and freely talk about what's going on for them.
Who is this for exactly? And what happens when someone enters that space?
So this is for women. Okay. Any woman.
So no men.
So here's my thing. I will see a man. It's a service for women. It was always intended that way, but I have really believe in access. And if someone were to come to me, or a referral partner were to come to me and say, hey, Erin, I've got this person who really just believes in what you're doing and really just there's nothing like it. They really just want that space as well. I'm not going to be like, no, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that. I really believe that everyone deserves to be listened to. But my clients it was intended for women. It's intended for women, and it can be any age range. And I talk to women talk to me about lots of different things, going through a divorce, a lot of people who have aging parents and so are really struggling with that and, wanting to live their own life, but also feeling obligations to care for an aging parent. People who've experienced grief, whether that's a loss of a relationship or a partner or a pet, people who are just frustrated with their kids, lots of different. There's no thing that's off the table. I just ask that everyone, that you're respectful, right? Like, obviously I'm not going to have somebody come in here and spew hate, but like, really, what is going on with you? There's so many times that I've thought during the day, like, oh my gosh, I just want to pick up the phone and call this person, but I know everybody's busy. I
just want to vent. So this is everyone's venting session, right? Just get it all out there and then walk away.
Yeah. And I ask clients at the beginning and at the end, what's a word that you would use to describe where you're at in this moment? So a lot of times when they're first coming in, it's hopelessness, it's despair, overwhelmed, frustrated, exhausted. And at the end, I'm hopeful. I feel energized. I feel lighter. Like, those kinds of things. That's happening in an hour because I listened to somebody.
Right.
And so I meet with people one-on-one in my office if they're local to New Hampshire. And then otherwise I meet virtually and I do 30-minute and 60-minute sessions. And I'm just really honored to share that space with women and for them to trust me that I'm going to listen to them and give them that space. And I'm doing that without judgment. I'm doing it without the intent of fixing.
I'm sure that's very transformational for women to not have that judgment or hope of fixing everything, because not everything can be wrapped up in a pretty bow.
Yeah. And I had a client say to me once, she's like, I wasn't really sure what this is, but I thought I would check it out. She goes, now I totally get it. Like, I get it. Like, we just don't have those spaces. And also the good thing about this, and this is here for whenever you need it, right? So I have clients that come regularly. I have a membership program. I have people that come regularly. And then I have people who pop in like every couple of months. And then I have people who, I've seen, and then they know I'm here, and maybe in 6 months, I'll see them again. It's been really interesting. But what's great is that people are like, oh, I don't have to do this long intake form. I know I can just call Erin and be like, hey, I need a last minute vent session like right now. And I'm like, great, let's do it.
What happens if someone talks to you and maybe it's something involving domestic violence or something pretty serious? Do you feel like you may need to intervene in some way? Like if you hear that, someone's being abused or something, how does that work when it comes to police or law or child protective services or things like that?
So there are mandatory reporting laws and requirements in New Hampshire.
Okay. And this HIPAA doesn't apply to you because you're not technically a doctor, right?
Yep, not a doctor. And so, yeah, I would have to comply with those for sure. The great thing about my training is that my background is I'm trained in this. So if somebody were to come to me and say that they were in a domestic violence relationship or situation, I would talk to them about that. First, make sure that they felt safe,
right?
And connecting them with the local crisis center. Thankfully, I have those relationships again because of my background, and making sure that safety planning becomes like the top priority and making sure they are connected to those resources. Also, I'm very clear on what I can and cannot handle. This is therapeutic in nature, but again, I'm not a therapist. So if somebody is having a mental health crisis, that is not appropriate for this. That person really does need to see a therapist. And I'm completely comfortable saying to somebody, hey, I don't think this is a good fit, but I know connected to some really great counselors and therapists. I'm happy to refer you to them. But this is a good for people who aren't in a crisis or who don't need that extensive mental health therapy. If you're waiting to get in to see a therapist, but the wait lists are just really, really long, this is kind of like, hey, I can use this as an interim step.
Right,
exactly.
Right. All right. Well, that's, everyone needs to vent. I mean, I'm sure, our significant others are tired of hearing about things, and I'm all for, sharing. Now, you said you do have a group or whatnot. So can anyone join a group and maybe, a group of women virtually?
Yeah. So my group session, it's called the group smash out session.
Okay.
It's a lot of fun. We get together on a Tuesday night, and that's in person.
Okay.
But if somebody somebody can contact me and say, hey, I want to be part of a group, or hey, I have 4 friends and we're in Kentucky. I'll be like, okay, let's set up a virtual session and we'll do a 1-hour virtual group smash out. I am looking into whether or not I just kind of put that on as a regular reoccurring Zoom on a particular night, and people can have the link and they just hop on, and it's like $20, but sometimes I'll do free ones and they can just join and be part of a community, which I think is really important. People are lonely, and people, especially those who are going through domestic violence, I understand how isolating that can feel and be. And if you don't know that there's other people out there who are experiencing similar things, it also makes it much harder to reach out to ask for help.
Absolutely. I mean, just knowing that there are people, like you said, going through something similar makes it feel like, okay, I'm not alone, or maybe hear what someone else did to get out to the other side, or just get advice from, other like-minded people is definitely the best. I mean, even like Facebook offers groups for just about anything.
Yeah.
So I do believe that, in the community, because I always say everything takes a village.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say to people too, anyone that's listening, that if you have a topic or an issue that really resonates with you, and I would just really encourage you to reach out to me by email, direct message me, and just say, hey, Erin, I would love it if you would start a group. One of the ones that we're starting a divorce group in January. So that's in person. Okay. But also thinking of doing something virtually online about people who have had bad experiences in the family court system, not just New Hampshire, just
right.
Like, hey, this is my experience and I need a space and a platform to talk about it and for people to get support. So if anyone has an idea like that and they're like, hey, I'd really would love to have a group around this issue, please let me know. I'm always happy to arrange that.
How would someone get in touch with you? What is your contact?
Yep. Okay. So you can email me at Erin, Erin, at seacoastlisteninglounge.com. I'm on Instagram, Seacoast Listening Lounge. My website is listeninglounge.com. There's a text feature on that. You text me too.
I will put all of that in the show notes. I'm just curious, how do you feel about AI and in the talking space? Does it ever come up?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I was just talking to someone about doing an article on this, and think that, there's positive and negatives. My concern with using AI for somebody who's going through domestic violence or somebody who is going through a mental health issue or even somebody who's going through a health issue and they type their symptoms in, It's not going to be specific to you, the individual. It's going to give kind of like a compiled answer of what people who generally have those symptoms are experiencing. I worry that people will rely on that. And also we self-edit. So we're like, hey, am I in a domestic violence situation? And you kind of put some things in. You're like, no, am I really feeling that? Is that really what's happening? I'm not sure, because you've been gaslit so much. Like you're not really identifying as somebody who's experiencing domestic violence at that point. So you kind of downplay what's going on. And so you put that in and it spits something back at you that really is not reflective of what may be going on and what you might need in terms of resources. So yeah, I would be concerned.
Scary out there.
It is. I mean, it has a lot of benefits for sure, right? But something like that, if you're talking about domestic violence, if you're talking about mental health, your general physical health, like reach out to the experts. There are resources. If you need an idea of what those are, also happy to talk about that and connect you to crisis centers and national organizations. But yeah, I make those connections with the people who are on the ground doing the work, in person doing the work.
Now, I'm sure, talking to all these women about all these topics can get exhausting. And so what do you do for grounding yourself or self-care to sort of stay back down level and not be upset by things you hear or anxiety about things that people talk about? And what can you maybe suggest for women listening or women that are going through that they can do for self-care or grounding?
Yeah. So I would say choose something that brings you joy. It can be something really simple. For me, it's the ocean. So if I'm like, okay, I've had a tough day, whether it's in my personal life or my professional life, I'm going to the ocean. And thankfully, I'm close to the ocean. And I will sit there. And I will, if it's nice outside, I'll be outside. If it's freezing and like below zero, I will park my car and just look at it. And that's very calming for me.
Near the ocean as well.
Yeah. So that's a good thing. For some people, it's listening to music. What thing, and again, it doesn't have to be this big thing, but that you can do for a few minutes. Some people, it's just taking a deep breath. That resets your brain and gets you out of that fight, flight, and freeze mode. So some people will do that. For me, people have asked me that question, like, how do you not get burned out? You've been doing this for like almost 20 years. It gives me energy. And I say that in a way
feeding
that
off people's, problems.
Nothing like that. It's just for me, I know what it feels like firsthand to not have someone hear me, to not feel like I could talk about what happened to me, feeling silenced. That did to me. And so I don't ever want any woman, any person to ever feel like they don't have a space where they have a voice. And so that gives me the energy and the ability to keep taking things in.
Purpose.
Yeah.
I know everyone asks me all the time and they're like, how do you do it? How do you get out of bed? How do you, do anything? And I say, well, I have to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else. And I have bills to pay and I have to make it worth something, right? My child's death has to be for some purpose. Mm-hmm. So that's, it does drive you.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is difficult. It's, understanding that, and being honest with it, that there are going to be days where it is like impossible. And there are going to be days where you don't feel like getting out of bed, and honoring those days and going, okay, but tomorrow is another day. And what can I do?
Right. So what is one message that you hope every listener will from this conversation?
That you have a voice and that your voice matters, and that there are spaces, if you're finding that difficult, there are spaces that want to hear what you have to say and believe in what you have to say. So never doubt that your voice matters. It does.
Well, and you make it easy. So I will put all of your contact info into the show notes so that everyone can reach out, because I know, we all can vent about something, even if it's just about what to make for dinner. Yeah. So I thank you for sharing all this, insight and your compassion and your devotion to survivors. Your work is a reminder that healing doesn't always start with answers. Sometimes it's just someone that truly listens. So to our listeners, if you're navigating fear, trauma, family court chaos, or just want to talk, you deserve a space where your story is safe and your voice matters. And you can learn more about Erin's work at Seacoast Listening Lounge and explore the resources she provides. So thank you so much for joining us. Absolutely. And we'll be in touch. All right, great. If there's someone that you want to hear from on this podcast, please feel free to send me an email. Or if you would like to be a guest, please reach out at ali@greysonschoice.org. If you would like to continue to hear our podcast, please consider donating at greysonschoice.org. Any amount helps to fund our mission to help protect our children.